People today, they could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome, and let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see so many familiar faces here in the room today for this important discussion. Thank you for joining AARP Illinois for this discussion on the future of Social Security. My name is Philippe Largent. I'm the State Director for AARP Illinois. I've got that privilege of having that job now for 2 years, and today is really a culmination of a lot of work to have this conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Shartae Robinson, Associate State Director for Advocacy and Outreach for AARP Illinois. It's so great to see so many influential Chicago leaders here today, including old, new, and friends to be.
Today's conversation is part of a national campaign that AARP has launched to protect Social Security and make sure it's here for future generations. This forum is one of many that will be hosted across the nation to hear from leaders like you about how important Social Security is.
And I also want to mention this is the first of its kind. We're the first of all the states to host this Social Security Forum. So this is a huge, huge event for us, and we're just very privileged and thankful for all of you all being here. Thank you. We value all of your insights and perspectives, and we want to hear your thoughts on ways to protect Social Security. We want to hear your stories, and we hope that you will pledge to join us as part of a nationwide grassroots army supporting the effort to protect the program. We hope that you will enjoy first this fireside chat with John Rogers Jr. and also the panel discussion that will soon follow. While reporting for her hometown for 28 years, Chi-Town, she was the recipient of numerous honors, including 6 Emmy Awards and the Excellence in Reporting Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. Please join us in giving a warm welcome to Robin Robinson.
We are here, of course, to talk about the future of Social Security, making sure there is a future for Social Security, that the program remains viable so that in our golden years it doesn't turn to rust. So many people are dependent upon this American program. We have some research and data we're going to share with you about just how important it is and how it's more important to some people than others, and what needs to be done to make sure that it's still around beyond the next 10 years. We've got a 10-year window here, so this is important work. But Social Security is only one way to ensure that you have a healthy, financially stable retirement. Wealth building, particularly generational wealth, is certainly the preference, so that Social Security just augments that and doesn't become your only lifeline. And on the topic of wealth building, there's no one better than the founder and co-CEO of Ariel Investments. Please welcome John Rogers with a wealth of information.
You know, we talk about Social Security because we know it's important, and that's what we're here to really talk about, is the future of Social Security. Why is this such an important topic for you?
We had multi-generational wealth and how they could invest in the stock market and build more wealth and get companies that had big dividend checks and live off their dividends. And then so much of America, people didn't have that opportunity.
It really makes for a healthier economy, doesn't it, if we don't have this big gap that is growing, as you said, those at the very top getting richer, those below that becoming experiencing more and more scarcity.
When things were really brutal for so much of America, people were being thrown out of their homes. I know a lot of you remember what 2008 and 2009. You know, the largest hedge fund in the country, or the most profitable hedge fund in the country, was run by a guy named John Paulson. They wrote a book about John Paulson called The Greatest Trade Ever Made. And he figured out that as people were being thrown out of their homes and the difficulties that were happening during that part of our economy, he could invest in ways that were going to really make him extraordinarily wealthy.
You were fortunate to have, your father gave you stocks as birthday gifts, and I'm sure your friends always thought that was real cool. But most of us did not have that opportunity. You have been intent on spreading the idea that it is learnable. You established a school, Ariel Academy, where the students learn from the beginning what it means to invest, save, be diversified, the terms that many of us don't even pay attention to. We just look at our bottom line.
At first that wasn't fun, getting an envelope instead of a toy under the Christmas tree. But what he did that was very smart is he let me keep the dividend checks. And I would get a check in the mail every 3 months or so from one of these companies, and it was getting that $20 check was a lot for a kid who's 12, 13, 14 years old. And as the years went on, the checks would get larger and the stocks would add up, and it was just a wonderful chance to get exposed to the stock market. So what we've done at the Ariel Community Academy, which is now over 25 years old, it's a public school that was started when former Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan and his sister Sarah were working at Ariel. Every kindergarten, first grade class would get a $20,000 class gift from Ariel. And we would invest it in Ariel mutual funds and show the kids how money could grow over time, and have an enhanced financial literacy curriculum for the kids so they would get comfortable with the markets. And then in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the kids would start to pick real stocks with real money, again, using my dad's model. And it's worked out really, really well.
Wow.
The kids were down at the office a couple weeks ago, and I was down at the school a week or two before that, and just talking to them about how do you do research on companies, how do you pick this stock versus that stock, and it's just worked out really well. When the kids get to 8th grade, typically the $20,000 has grown to $55,000 or $60,000. They get the benefit of learning about long-term investing and how the magic of compound interest works, that money will grow over time if it's invested in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And they take a portion of the profits, Arnie thought this was important, and give a gift to the school, some kind of feeling. We wanted to teach the kids philanthropy. And so there might be a new sound system for the stage, it might be a new computer for the investment classroom, what have you. And then they take a portion of the profits that are left and send $20,000 back to the next first grade class. So it's become a self-perpetuating program. And then what's left over, the kids divide among themselves, and if they agree to put the money into a 529 program, we'll match it with $500 and hope they invest their 529 money into the Ariel mutual funds, which is available there, so we hope that works. But the thing to get to the whole, it's a long story because it's really been an important thing that we believe gets people prepared for retirement, get prepared for that first job, get prepared for that first house. we find that the kids are not only learning about investing themselves, but they're starting to think about financial services careers. And you know, people get paid more in financial services than most industries. And that was kind of an added bonus that we never imagined. And we've seen many of the kids work at Ariel full-time, be summer interns at Ariel, and go off and have other successful financial services careers. And the last thing that we learned that we never imagined is these kids would often be the point person for their families. They would be teaching their aunts, their uncles, their moms, their dads, their grandparents about the stock market, because a lot of them hadn't had that exposure to investing. They didn't have a dad like me that was exposing them to the markets. So the parents have started to learn, and that's been wonderful. And because of all this work, during President Obama's administration, he asked me to chair his council on financial capability for all Americans. And it was basically financial literacy. And it included AARP, it included many great organizations that care about investment success for their constituents. And at the end of that, we made a recommendation to the president to get to encourage financial institutions and local communities to partner with public schools and teach kids about the stock market and have that kind of partnership between a financial institution and a public school throughout a city like Chicago. We think would enhance the opportunity for those folks to be prepared for their financial futures, especially in a day and age where the pension funds that so many corporations used to have, we all know no longer exist.
That is a great point. I'm thinking, how can we franchise Ariel Community Academy? What a beautiful model. And the fact that it's been around for 25 years so you can see the proof of performance is because I remember when you first started it, but just the ongoing effects from this one school. If I had invested, they figured this out for me in 1986 when you opened the fund. You opened the fund the first year I got here. You could have called me and said, here, invest $100, but $10,000, I'd have $432,000 today, had I been smart enough to do that. But I was at the club. So how do you demystify the idea of investing for people? A lot of us think, at our age, well, I missed that boat, or I can't do it. But I am, maybe my grandchild can get a little stock and start like you did. But for me, it's too late. How is that true, and what should we do?
I come back to what I started with. I think it's really the job of public schools. I often joke that Arnie Duncan and I went to the same school, and I spent 4 years taking French. When I got to Princeton, I had to take a couple years of French. I can only say like 3 words in French now. It wasn't the good use of my time. I should have been learning about financial literacy, learning about things that are really going to help you in your life. And I can't think of any other place to demystify it than the public school system. Now, our vice chairman, Charlie Bobrinskoy, has created a program for primarily Catholic schools, where he's gotten many of the major financial institutions to lend an executive to a Catholic school for 8th graders. And it's a much sort of a smaller program than the Ariel Community Academy, but it's worked out very well. The kids invest in the stock market. They meet with a young person every month who comes in for an hour or so and teaches them demystifies, to your terminology, what the markets are all about. But the idea is they get to benefit. When they graduate at 8th grade, they get an envelope with the money in cash of what their money has grown to through their investment choices, which we think was really important. So Charlie loves that program. He's worked with Big Shoulders here in Chicago to make that work. And so we don't talk enough about that because it's nice that we're touching the Catholic school system as well as the public school system.
So you've been partnering with AARP, as you mentioned, and because of that, the Illinois Secure Choice Retirement Savings Program was adopted in Illinois as the first state in the nation to do so. It's the second state to implement it. It's an IRA-centered employment-based retirement savings program now available to employees of employers who did not previously offer a retirement savings benefit. And as you've mentioned, more and more employers are not offering the traditional hardwired pension program that used to make Social Security kind of an augmentation. So 26,000 participating employers and 149,000 employees of those employers have now put away $173 million.
As we said a couple times today, but it's just so it's worth being reinforced. All the incentives from government have been for large corporations to get rid of their pension plans, which served Americans for so well. We all have friends and family who grew up working at General Motors, working at Ford, working at Chrysler, working for a large manufacturer, or working at IBM, and they would get a really great traditional pension guaranteed for them and their spouse, and the same way that we have great public pension funds for teachers, firemen, policemen, city employees, state employees, and things like that. So it's just so important that I think two things we have to do. One, if we can't change this governmental angle, if we can't find the governmental will, the congressional leadership to push to bring back pension plans the way they were, which I think is the right answer, if we can't do that, then we have to depend on these types of programs that I know Treasurer Mike Frericks was so instrumental in leading them. And I think that's a good extra benefit to go along with your Social Security. So it's the right thing to do. We need to get the word out everywhere and encourage more and more employers to be involved and get more and more employees involved. But I still can't say how important it is to try to start to push our congressional leaders and our senators and the like to get companies the right financial incentives to bring back a traditional pension.
You're saying that they've had the incentive to get rid of them, which sounds like maybe some lobbyists might have had some influence there, because why else would you want the companies to get rid of their pensions? And when you say if we can't get them to change the incentive, we don't say if we can't around here, because we can. AARP, if we say we demand, right, and if there's enough of us, I didn't even know there was an incentive, a government incentive, whether it's tax policy or whatever it is, for companies to get rid of their traditional pension programs. I want to say something that maybe people don't realize. You talked about how you really mentor these students at Ariel, and she didn't go to Ariel, but I do know that a person that started as an intern at Ariel Investments is now the co-CEO. So that's how open his eyes are to talent, and I really appreciate you being here and all that you do for the community. Thank you so much. John Rogers.
And now we'd like to welcome our panel to talk about the future of Social Security, why it's important, and most importantly, what we all can do or need to consider as we attempt to make sure that it's around for the future. How are you doing, ladies? Great. Okay, yeah, you've heard John Rogers and learned a little bit. I know I did. That we're not. She says she feels like a loser now. It's never too late. All right, well, first let's introduce Maria Castro, the founder and CEO of Inspiration #Love Purse. Should I pronounce the hashtag or just Inspiration Love Purse? Use your microphone.
It's actually it's founder and CEO of Love Purse.
Of Love Purse.
Yeah. And
okay.
AKA Comcast. I do work for Comcast 9 to 5.
That's true. You are the Regional External Affairs Manager for Comcast, yes, which means that you have a great opportunity to deal in community and with community, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Also, Sharita Ellens, the President and CEO of Women Employed. Yes. First of all, I just like the name of that, Women Employed. And then Truth in Accounting. That name kind of scares me a little bit. Sheila Weinberg, founder, especially it's right after tax season. Did you all tell the truth in your accounting? Sheila Weinberg is the founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting. But we're here to talk about something that's not so new, Social Security, because we don't want it to end up, something that we talk about that used to be. We want it to be present, solvent, I think. Does everybody, first let me just make sure there's agreement that it is worth saving. Absolutely. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Just make sure.
I need it.
Right. Well, I always want to make space for divergent voices and honor that everybody doesn't feel the same way about everything. But let's just talk a little bit about why the argument in favor of, and if someone has an argument against it, I'm willing to hear that too. So, as a program, it's had remarkable impact. Millions of people across Illinois, more than 20% of Illinois residents, that's 2.3 million people are getting Social Security benefits. So that puts about $44 billion into Illinois' economy annually. And of those receiving benefits, over 1.7 million are retired workers, 240,000 are residents who receive Social Security disability, and 203,000 receive spousal and survivor benefits. And I think it's interesting to note that the by far largest number are those who are receiving benefits because of their lifetime of employment. As we like to call it, an entitlement. I think that it's good to note that we paid into it, and that's the bulk of who are getting benefits from it. Beyond those really impactful statewide numbers, AARP research released last fall revealed that most Chicagoans, 75%, are anxious about having enough money in their retirement years. That anxiety is significantly higher for Black or African Americans and Hispanic or Latino Chicagoans than other racial ethnic groups. And among households with annual incomes less than $75,000 a year, 59% of those responding to the survey are particularly anxious because they're making less than $75,000 a year. This is really concerning on all levels of financial security. Considering this, how important, I mean, I don't know how you could rate it. Is it a scale of 1 to 10? Is it life-changing, world-shattering? I'm not sure, but how important is it to ensure Social Security's future is secured? Whoever wants to answer first.
So when you think about the populations that really depend on Social Security because they don't have any other savings. So when they retire, their Social Security check will be the only form of income they have coming in. And that is majority women, that is majority people of color, in particular Black and Latinx folks. So there are stats, and I'm going to share this. Social Security brings 9.4 million older women above the poverty line. In May, Social Security lives 498,000 people aged 65 and up above the poverty line. So we're not talking about having a cushion. We're not talking about having something extra. We're talking about being able to just provide for your essentials. The average Social Security check is what, $22,000 a year or something around that effect? That's not even a living wage in Illinois. So when you think about these folks that are concerned that it might not exist, they have no other options other than to work until they die, which is why you see folks in Walmart working well past the age where they should be able to relax and enjoy the rest of their life. You have women who have, we talk about the pay gap, right? They have not been able to earn enough money to put into other sources. So when John Lovell, but when he was here talking earlier about everybody can save, everybody cannot save if you're living from paycheck to paycheck or if the months have more days than what your paycheck can cover.
Right.
And so that Social Security is a lifeline for those folks. You think about women and retirement savings. Women weren't even allowed to have a credit card or mortgage in their name till 1974.
How about that?
Their husband had to sign for them. Single women were not able to get a mortgage or a credit card. So where were they investing to be able to have a retirement savings?
Wow.
So when you think about the populations that are most impacted by Social Security or not, or the risk of not having Social Security, those are the folks that we need to center and keep in mind when we think about how important it is.
Did you hear those stats? Raising people above the poverty level.
If you have a politician who says, I'm not going to touch this, it's the third rail of politics, and they don't want to touch it, what they're actually saying is they do have a plan for Social Security, and their plan is that in 2035, benefits will automatically be cut by 17%. That's their plan if they don't have a plan. So this isn't something that everybody is touching it. It just needs to be, I love AARP, educating people about the need to reform this. As I said, it's a very important safety net, as you mentioned, for people. But I think of the other side, of people who are in retirement, and let's say they're making $75,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. In their instance, what we've done is set up a huge wealth transfer program. A lot of money is going, being taxed And some of that is going to people who need the safety net, but some are going to people who are well off and don't need that. So we need to look at reforming it overall, not just look at it, safety net's important, but let's look at the other side where people who are getting the benefits who really don't need the benefits are draining the system.
Is there some sort of formula that has been misplayed? I mean, have we just not kept up with how much money should be going into the Social Security fund? Because I'm not sure that people would say, well, you make enough money that even though you've paid into Social Security, you don't get Social Security. I think that's going to be, so I'm just wondering how we got to that point.
Unfortunately, the concept of paying into Social Security, the chief actuary of Social Security says that's not what's going on. Social Security, they're not saying contributions on your paycheck when it comes out. It's a pure and simple tax. And the Social Security chief actuary has said that even though you have been taxed, it doesn't mean you're going to collect those benefits. The federal government does not believe it owes any Social Security benefits beyond the checks that are due to currently be written next month. And so people need to let their elected officials know that this is an important program and you need to account for it properly. But if you've gone ahead and promised the people, the federal government's promised $23.5 trillion of benefits, they have no idea where they're going to get the money to pay those. And people are counting on those.
I like how you say we need to let them know. The thought I was thinking was we need to rise up. Okay.
I think what's also important to add to that is baby boomers. It was a lot of baby boomers, and they all retiring. And so it's not enough Gen Xers and millennials to make up the difference for what baby boomers are taking out of the system.
And they aren't making as much money either.
And they're not making as much money. So in 1984, people under 40 made up more than 60% of the workforce. That's fallen to 45% today.
Wow.
Right? So you also have to look at how much is coming out versus how much is going in.
Yeah, and unfortunately, to your point, it's the little guys, right? So it's the people of color. It's the people who aren't making as much money as someone, in a $200,000 to $300,000 job range, where yes, if they were to retire, they don't really need that Social Security, but they would take it because they worked for it, right? So they're going to think, well, I worked for it. Why am I not going to take it? But the problem is that, to Mr. The guy from Ariel, he was talking about don't just rely on that. Yeah. And that's where you start thinking about generational wealth. Like, if Social Security isn't going to be here, what are we going to do for our grandkids to make sure that they aren't going to be in this situation and to make sure that they understand finances as soon as they get their first jobs and things like that? I think that's a really critical, point, other than that we have to have Social Security, but how are we going to educate everybody else about it?
Well, we're going to have another Great Depression, which inspired the first round of some kind of forced savings for people. We have this is a lot to unpack, but I do want to get to some specifics because I hadn't even thought about this until my conversations with AARP, which are what do we suggest are the best ways to address the insolvency that we know is coming, right, in 10 years. You could raise the amount of money that is subject to Social Security tax. As I keep pointing out to people because it just fascinates me, you only pay Social Security on the first $168,000. Maybe we raise that to the first $300,000. Or do we? Is there? I don't think there's much appetite for this, which is why most politicians don't say anything. As you pointed out, they're just waiting for it to expire on its own, or cut benefits. Something it's one or the other, right? If you're about to be insolvent, you got to get more money. You got to give less money to the recipients. What do you think there's an appetite for? What would be reasonable that we could push people for? I'm going with you because you are truth in accounting, and so I'm wondering what's palatable.
I love that you highlighted that the way to fix this, what we have is a short-term cash shortfall. That's easy.
From an accountant. Okay.
You need to either bring more money in or take less money out. And the direness of the situation is that probably all of the above need to be done. One thing that I think is, quote, easy is that retirement, people are living a lot longer, but the retirement age has not changed that much. So I think perhaps going ahead and cutting benefits by increasing the retirement age would be a good thing. But again, if a politician doesn't, a lot of times when they reform these type of programs, they wind up doing the opposite. They wind up giving more benefits or putting less money in. So when you hear these options from these politicians, go ahead and think to yourself, is this going to bring more money into the system, or is this going to cut less money going out of the system? And if their quote reforms are not doing that, then they're not true reforms that are good for the program.
I think when you talk about raising the retirement age, and you have politicians who are worried about their jobs.
The retirement age has been increased. So it increased from 65 to 67, and the last of that happened in 2022. And that increase subjected folks to, I think it was like a 17% cut in benefits, 13 or 17%.
Because they had to wait later to take their benefits.
They taking their benefits later.
66.5.
The other concern that I have with raising the retirement age is that life expectancy is not equal across the board. And so when you think of post-pandemic life expectancy for Black folk is now 70.8. And you're talking about raising retirement age to 70. So you're saying I've been paying into a system for 50 years, and on average, I got 8 months to collect.
Mm-hmm.
The math just doesn't math, and it's just not equitable. And so, yes, life expectancy across the board is raising for some, but not for all. And we need to make sure that we're taking those things into consideration. But also, when you say that to young folks, when you say that to millennials, and you say, wait a minute, who are just starting out, and Gen Zers who are just starting out, you want me to work how long? We're in a different time. So I just don't see that can happen. I do think that there has to be a menu of things, and it doesn't have to start with slashing the retirement age. We should be increasing the amount of wages that can be taxed. There's no reason why it's capped at $168,000. That's an increase, by the way. It was $160,000. And when we look at that, if we had kept, when it first started, I think in the 80s, it was like 90% of the aggregate wages. If we had kept on the same pace, 300,000 would be able to be taxed. And so we want to look at how much more we can pull into the system. And then if we are going to be thinking about cutting benefits, it has to be on a grading scale. Like it has to be based off of income. It has to be based off of, age and things of that sort, to make sure that it's equitable and not across the board. Because what typically happens when you go in and you negotiate for this legislation and you negotiate for these policies, the people that end up on the cutting room floor are always the ones that need it the most. Always the most marginalized. So we have to make sure that whatever we decide, that those that can afford it pay, and those that can't, we don't pull their lifeline away.
Right, so we have to change that. Takes a movement, and I think that's what we're about trying to do here today. What do you think is the most important thing that the individuals can do besides know where your legislator stands?
Come to informational sessions like this so that you get the knowledge that you need to be able to advocate for yourself. I think too often we rely too much on others to be our voice, to be our advocates, but you have to take ownership of understanding what these policy means. How many people in this room learned something or heard a stat that you did not know before coming in? Right. And so take what you learned, go have a conversation with someone else, and then the next time you see something like this come up, tell people to come out doing what you need to do to become aware. The information is out there, and there are groups like Women Employed, like AARP, and others that are trying to get this information out to the community, but we have to do more.
And I would say the biggest thing is what I've learned, because the federal government doesn't put the liability on the books, is that the federal government doesn't believe it owes you all these benefits. So I would not count on them. So building your own wealth, say, if you can, save for yourself as much as you can, because you really, if the government can't count these, then you can't count on them. So go ahead and build savings, take care of yourself, get a long-term health insurance program. Just assume that if I get Social Security, it will be an added benefit, not that I'm going to count on it. And I know a lot of people can't do that, but if you can, go ahead and build your own wealth.
Good advice.
Well, and I have what I consider a seat at the table at work, and I don't take that privilege lightly. So I always love to let my community partners know about things. And so I've been an AARP member for over 15 years. And so when I see something that is really interesting and that I know is great for my community, I post it on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, always. And I'll take a picture of it and I put it out there, and I tell them, if you're not a member, you should join, because it doesn't matter if you're 50, you still should join, because the content is so great and the information that they share is, it's a wealth of information. And so I use that to my advantage, because I know I have a large audience of people that do read my posts, because I get responses all the time, like, oh my God, I didn't know that, so take advantage of the opportunities that you have in this room when it comes to social media, and or whether you have a seat at the table at your employer, and let them know what you've heard, what you've read, and share that with them, because that's really important.
I think that is a great point, because it also brings up the intergenerational importance of Social Security. A lot of us are caregivers, maybe right before we're getting Social Security. I know that I cared for my parents for the last 15 years or so. Had they not been getting Social Security, that would have been a lot more difficult. It enabled them to stay in their home longer. When my mom did have to move in with me, we were able to have someone to come in and give me a little respite, because she wasn't as nice as she used to be, but that's another story. But young people, need to understand that having their older relatives have a little more financial security is going to impact them, because you're going to have to help them if they need help. But anything else that you would say to young people, and we're running long, so this is going to be my last question, to a young person, not retirement age, what would you say?
I would say to make sure that they pay themselves first. If they're able to save money, no matter how small of an amount it is, that they should be paying themselves first, so they can have a little nest egg, so that they don't have to worry about what they're going to do when Social Security is no longer.
I meant, what can we say to them to get them to jump on the bandwagon, get in our Army, and save Social Security?
I think one of the other appeals to that, when you talk about caregiving, they need to understand that most likely their parents don't have a nest egg, and that financial burden is going to fall on them, like it's falling on me right now. And if you don't want that to happen, then you need to help advocate for your parents while you're also saving and paying for yourself. Both things need to happen, and they need to make sure they long-term care policy for the parents and for themselves.
And then they need to be aware of some of the inequities in the system where, again, some people, young people who are just barely scraping by, are paying Social Security taxes, and some of that money is going to people who have a higher standard of living than they do. And is that a moral thing?
And they all question whether or not there will be anything there for them when they do reach the 150 retirement age, whatever we're going to make it, right? But I think that whole cycle of, as soon as you become an empty nester, then you got to start taking care of your parents, and then you become that person. So it is a circle of life, and in families we are used to caring for one another. But when you've counted on something, right? I think that we can do this, and it just takes all hands on deck. I really appreciate you. I want to thank our panelists: Maria Castro, founder and CEO of Love Purse, I finally got it right, as well as the regional External Affairs Manager for Comcast. I didn't get to ask you about, I know Comcast does a lot of special things for seniors that can't pay their utility bill. We'll talk about that another time, okay? I knew Claire Kirk. from Clara's House Shelter. Do you may remember that? Okay, she was about to close down about every 3 months. But Comcast, they never turn the lights off on them. So Sharita Allen's president and CEO of Women Employed. That means she's all of our president and CEO. And my new favorite CPA, Sheila Weinberg, founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting. You guys have been wonderful. Please give a warm welcome to Rosanna Marquez.
As a member of AARP's board of directors, I am very proud of that work because Social Security is critical to financial security for so many millions of people in Illinois and around the country. It provides guaranteed and inflation-protected income to people throughout their retirement years. AARP's commitment to Social Security is steadfast. We know that families are counting on us. We will not let them down, and we will not let you down. As we've heard from John, Rogers, and the panelists, there is broad agreement that it is critical to protect and save Social Security for the future. People work hard and pay into Social Security, so it is only fair to expect them to get the money they've earned through a lifetime of hard work. How critical is the program here in Chicago and throughout Illinois? Well, as Robin and the panelists told you, nearly 2.3 million residents in Illinois receive Social Security benefits. Of those who are 65 and over, almost 20% rely on Social Security for 90%, almost all of their income. And at an average of $22,000 a year, as you heard, that is not much to live on. That percentage, as I think you heard, also increases to 30% for Black individuals 65 and older. Social Security is nearly their only source of income. A soon-to-be-released AARP's Illinois survey reveals that 83% of retired Illinoisans rely on Social Security as a primary source. May not be that 90, 100%, but it's most of their income. These numbers around the heavy reliance on Social Security by so many households in Illinois are totally in line with what we see nationwide, where over half of those 65 and over count on Social Security as their primary source of income, and 25% rely on almost entirely on Social Security for their income. So this truly is a national issue, not just an Illinois issue. We heard today that the impact of Social Security is especially pronounced in the Black and Latino communities and for women. Thank you for everyone who shared insights on this very important point. If Washington doesn't take action in the next 10 years to save Social Security, it could be cut for everyone by, as you heard, nearly 20%. So just think of what that would mean in people's lives, in your lives. Quite simply, failure is not an option. Our elected officials on the national level need to come together to identify and enact bipartisan solutions that will ensure that Americans get the money they have earned. We need a long-term solution that is current so that future retirees can count on it for their financial security. And it all starts with you here today. Please stay engaged, stay informed, and make sure your voice is heard. As I think you heard, this event is the first of a series of convenings that AARP is organizing across the country to focus on the need to spur action around Social Security sooner rather than later. But this all started back on September 21st of last year with our conversations with Congress, which I and a number of our members and others attended, where we brought together two recognized leaders on Social Security in Congress, a Republican, Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, and a Democrat, Representative John Larson from Connecticut, to share their ideas. There is some conversation going, but no action yet. We also heard from a number of older Americans concerned about their future in retirement. We must tell our candidates and elected officials that we need a bipartisan solution to protect Security for the future. Please join our fight to protect Social Security. Add your name to the growing list of advocates who are willing to speak out on this. Our elected officials need to hear your stories and your voices. At AARP, we are ready to provide you the information that you need, just like at this forum today. And we are eager to work alongside with all of you to protect Social Security for generations to come. I want to thank you all again for taking the time out of your schedules to join us this afternoon. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.